We had some kids here earlier who I think did my sound check for me and set the level of the microphone. But I've brought the Queen with us here tonight. If you didn't get a chance to visit Everly Campbell from EC Wares in the lobby, she'll be back out there at intermission. This was part of a project she did earlier that was about smashing the patriarchy, and it's Queens of Empowerment. And so this Queen is going to grace us here tonight. All right, let's get this to the right level. There we go. Whoop. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Story Night, the beginning of our 15th season, if you can believe that. Yes. I'm Jodi Eichelberger, and I have interpreting with me right now Lavona Andrew, and then, yes, great. And then we will also have Patty Durham helping us out during the show. So, Darian, I noticed a bunch of queenly songs there. I think I heard some Beyonce, the Queen Bee. I heard some Queen. I heard some royal songs. November is actually kind of a big month for the band Queen, I was noticing. Bohemian Rhapsody hit the number one on the British charts in November. Their first tour, I think, started in November. Tragically, Freddie Mercury announced that he had AIDS in November and then died the next day, and then also had the funeral just a few days after that. So November encapsulated a great deal of major events in the band Queen. Darian is here tonight because a year ago, I think is when we first met, and Darian was here at Story as a featured storyteller. Were any of you here for Record last year? So you might remember a certain story about Bohemian Rhapsody. Darian was approached by the producers of the film Bohemian Rhapsody, which also came out in November. And, well, tell them what they asked you to do.
Well, I won't launch into the whole story because we have real storytellers.
Yeah, you can hear it on our podcast,
tonight. But essentially, I had to make a one-woman band version of the song Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen. And if you've seen the movie, you know how much goes into that.
Yes. So originally, the producers of the film didn't know if they were going to be able to get the rights to the songs from Queen. And so they were reaching out to individual artists, including this very talented person right here, to see about them creating covers that might have been used in the film. They did get the rights to Queen, so Freddie Mercury won out, I guess. But Darian, you have a beautiful voice. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, absolutely. So we are very thankful to the City of Boise and the Boise Arts and History Department. Last year, the mayor designated Story Night as the cultural ambassador for the city of Boise, which has been a great honor for us. She did that in order to celebrate the individual stories in our community, to raise up the individual stories and celebrate that and make it really a city that everyone can live in and everyone feels a part of. And we are very pleased to be a part of that mission. We also want to thank our season sponsor, Keenly, and our show sponsor tonight, the Boise Group. Thanks to those guys. So, my first job out of college was as an itinerant puppeteer that toured through mostly the northwest of the United States. Actually in King County. That's next month, though. So, in the Seattle area, primarily. And my first show with them was Rumpelstiltskin. And I played Rumpel. I also played the king. I played the miller. And I played the baby. And I played the dog, Fritz. My partner played the miller's daughter, who became the queen. But only as long as she could spin straw into gold. because of her stupid father's promise to the king that his daughter could do this. And my partner, though, she had a certain aspects of being a queen, which is not ideal when you're on a two-person tour where you have to load in everything, pack it up, do the show, put it away, drive to the next destination, and it's a big set, lots of equipment. She was not really there for that. She was there for her performance. And sometimes I would catch her, I'd be racing to lay the cables and put up the light equipment and the sound equipment before the kids would come in to see the show and the assembly. And I would look over at her and she'd be standing amidst a pile of unpacked boxes, just looking at her fragile skin on her hands. And one time I asked her, Samantha, when you look at your hands, what do you see? And she kind of looked at me like, I don't know what you're talking about. But then she smiled as if she'd already had seen her fortune there. And so we continued to do this show for the whole contract was 9 months. And she had some very severe pronouncements as queen as well. The boxes that held our lighting equipment were quite large, and it took both of us to carry them, which she did not enjoy. And sometimes kids would be around us, and we'd be pick up these boxes, and we're heading back to the van after the show, and a child would say, "Hey, what's in that box? What's that box for?" And she turned and said, "It'll be your coffin if you don't get out of the way." I think fourth grade student, third grade student. Even more troubling to me was when she shared with me one time that she wished she would be hit by a car and paralyzed from the waist down so that her boyfriend would have to serve her. That's who I was touring with. Yeah, it was a lot. The Queen's palate did not include meat. And when you're on the road, you don't have a lot of meal choices, and I pulled through a drive-thru, ordered a big juicy hamburger, and I don't remember what she ordered, but I took my hamburger and was about to bite into it, and she just looked at me with disdain and said, "I will not eat a hamburger until all the children in Africa can eat a hamburger." Okay. We had a rule as we toured that the driver got to choose the music, and I, being a recent music college grad, had kind of an eclectic, strange taste in music. But her being a queen, I thought she should appreciate my recording of Gregorian chant as performed by Benedictine priests. She did not. So I don't know she was definitely the queen, but I was not the king. I'm not sure what playing piece I was among her group of chess pieces. In fact, I'm not even sure we were on the same team. She was quite liberal, and I would say at the time I was definitely more like the checkerboard. Everything was very black and white. And I told her, and it was shocking to her that I said, the only book I need is the Bible. And she looked concerned. But I did also share that I was reading Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged while we toured Spokane. So I don't know how those two things go together. We finally made it through our 9-month contract, and I didn't see her again, really. But there were some things that, even after we were separated, there were things that impacted me. For instance, I tried becoming vegetarian for a while. And again, I'm still touring, I'm on the road, so I had to eat at different places, and here another queen comes into play, and that's Dairy Queen. I pulled through the drive-thru at Dairy Queen. No, I actually went into the Dairy Queen, and I asked for a garden burger, which we had before. And so I get to my table, I'm like, yes, at least I can still have some version of a hamburger. And I take a bite and I wasn't expecting quite the weight of a beef patty, but it just was like air. And then I opened the bun, and sure enough, it was. There was nothing but lettuce and tomato and onion between two buns. So I went up to the counter, and I said, "I'm sorry, did you forget the patty?" And they were like, "Didn't you order a garden burger?" And I was like, "Yes." And they're like, "That's it." All right. I guess it wasn't quite as bad as when I went to a Cracker Barrel on tour, and the vegetable of the day was prominently displayed to be macaroni and cheese. I asked our server, "Are there any vegetables in the macaroni and cheese?" "No." "But it is your vegetable of the day." "Yes." 10 years go by. I'm not touring to schools anymore. I was very fortunate, actually, to perform on Broadway, and there was a production that required puppeteers who could also act and sing. And so I'm in this show, and I share a dressing room with Peter Lentz, who's a very well-respected professional puppeteer in film and television, and our paths crossed in this Broadway show, which was super fun. And, he was a bit more privileged than I was. I shared an apartment in Brooklyn with two other people. The roommate that I had there said, "I'm not neurotic, I just do neurotic things." I did later understand that distinction. But he was saved from that. He lived far off in Katona, a suburb there with large, beautiful homes. And he came at half hour to the show into our dressing room, and he said, "I had the strangest thing happen today." I was like, "Oh, what?" He said, "Well, I took the kids to the park, and there was a woman there with her kid, and she said that they'd moved there because her husband worked for the Queen of Thanksgiving, Martha Stewart, who lives in Katona, and she was there, and that she was a puppeteer." And of course, he raised his eyebrow, like, "Really?" Because it's a pretty small professional clique, these professional puppeteers. So he said, "Oh, well, where do you work, or who have you worked with?" And she said, "Well, my career started off pretty bad because I had the most horrific tour partner." And he said, "Well, who was your tour partner?" And I said, "Well, did you know who it was?" And he said, "Yes." I was shocked to find out it was you. So I was pleased that he was shocked because, well, the only thing I could think is that I had changed in that 10 years. And, actually probably at that time that I was touring with her, I was probably the rook. I could only go in straight lines, and I had an armor of stone around me because I was protecting something I hadn't showed to the world, and so I had a lot of armor, and that probably wasn't fun to tour with. And the Queen, meanwhile, has her power, and I'm not a chess player, but I think her power is that she can change directions at any time to respond to what's going on. And it turns out that, in a way, was Sarah, because later in our tour, we went through another drive-thru, and I was surprised when Sarah ordered a big, juicy hamburger. And I looked over at her as she unwrapped it and brought it up to her mouth, and I said, "Sarah, what about all those starving children in Africa?" She looked down at the burger, and she looked at me and said, "Screw 'em." And now a message from our season sponsor that is exactly the opposite of screw 'em. Imagine this. The Queen, fierce, fearless, and oh so clever, glides across the board, making strategic moves that leave opponents guessing. In the game of chess, she's the ultimate powerhouse, capable of turning the tide with single, decisive play. Ooh, I think we should insert some kind of royal strumming here. Do you have any? Yeah. Let me just do that last sentence again. In the game of chess, she's the ultimate powerhouse, capable of turning the tide with a single, decisive play. At Keenly, we bring that same moxie to your benefits strategy. We're not just checking boxes, we're making smart moves that protect your people and elevate your business. Our approach blends deep knowledge, genuine empathy, and a touch of Keenly creativity to design benefits that deliver results and keep you ahead. So whether it's navigating compliance or simplifying enrollment, we help you lead the board with confidence and style, because when it comes to benefits, it pays to think like a queen. Make a move. Make it Keenly. All right, who is here for the first time tonight? You've never been to Story Night before. All right, fair number. How many of you were at Starry Story Night just last month? And that was all, oh, great. And that was also your only show that you've seen, or no? Okay, great. Because that was your first time. So tonight is not gonna be like that. All right, this is a little different. That show takes several months to prepare. I did this one in 5 minutes. Not really true, but. So the way this show works tonight is we have 3 featured storytellers that we've either gotten from recruiting or they self-submitted, and we work with those storytellers. And actually anyone in our audience can become a featured storyteller just by writing into story@storystorynight.org. And we are looking for some featured storytellers for December, both for the late night show and for the next show we have here at King. Combined with that, though, we do have the Slammer booth right over here where Ben is standing. And I understand we don't have a Slammer in there yet. This is your chance to share a 5-minute story on the theme, and we intermix that with the featured storytellers. So you just write your name in, stick it on the chessboard there, and then during the show I call it over here and pick a name, and you get to share a 5-minute story. We are PG-13, so keep that in mind, and try and incorporate the theme in some way. We have some amazing storytellers for tonight, and I am excited to welcome our first storyteller, who actually did submit based on a call that we put on Facebook. This is his first time sharing a story at Story Night. So please welcome Jahziel Maldonado.
So I lost my job back home in Puerto Rico with the church that I was serving there. And then I started thinking, what I'm gonna do next with my life? How would I look like living in a different place? So I talk in the church and I say, hey, I've been doing this volunteer work with the Arabic community in Puerto Rico for a couple of years, and I would like to do it outside of Puerto Rico. What do you recommend? So they say, so what about if you think about, we're giving you these 2 options, Chicago or Boise, Idaho. Never been in both of those places, never lived outside of Puerto Rico. So I started applying for jobs, and then Boise immediately got back to me and got me an interview in education where I worked for the last 14 years. So I got a phone interview with other 4 people over the phone. There was no Zoom, no FaceTime, no nothing, just a voice interview. So they say, they got me the interview. A couple of days later, they called me back and said, hey, we want to offer you the job. And I was like, wait a minute, you haven't seen me and you are allowing me to work in education without looking and see who I am? And they were like, yeah, we just like what we heard over the phone and what we saw on the resume, so the job is yours. When can you be here? So I said, well, I got a ticket, a one-way ticket to Boise in January 19. So they were like, okay, be here on the 21st with these papers, so we can start the process. When I told my parents about it and say, hey, I got the job and I got accepted, so I am moving. And they say, whoa, no. You are not moving. I just had a car accident and my car was not working back home. So they say, until you don't sell that car, you are not leaving Puerto Rico. And I was like, how am I gonna sell this car that is not running? My parents went to an anniversary trip in a cruise, and I decided to put the car on listing. And the next day I got a call. and was this gentleman and say, hey, I want to see the car. And I say, hey, just so you know, the car is not working, doesn't move or nothing. And he was like, oh, I don't care. I want to see the car. So I was, okay, you can come tomorrow. When he came, he was like, okay, I want it. How much you want for it? And I was like, do you know the car is not working, right? And he was like, yes, I just need the pieces of the car. How much you want? And I say, what about 1,500? And he was like, okay, here's half of it. And tomorrow I'm gonna come with a tow truck and give you the other half and take the car. And I was like, whoa, I need to call my parents now. So I called them, they were in the cruise, and I say, hey, guess what? And I was like, what? I sold the car, so I'm leaving to Idaho. And they could not believe it, so I packed my stuff, mostly I spent those $1,500 in ticket and boxes and everything, and show up here in Idaho with $527. Without knowing anybody, not knowing the language, the culture, nothing here. So I was like, if the job is a scam, we'll see what happens. So 2 days later, I show up to the office and the job was real. They had everything placed on there on the table. They give me all the paperwork, I sign everything, and they say, we're gonna send the background check, come back next week and you start your new job. And I was like, oh wow, this is really real happening. So as I said, my English language was really limited at that time, and still. But I was like nodding all the time when people were talking to me. And I did like that like 1 year. I survived here in Idaho. And until a couple years later, I continued doing my volunteer work with the Arabic community, and then I moved with the Spanish community here with the church. Until one time I decided, you know, I really want to go to a Pride event. I never been a Pride event. So I was living on Vista Avenue, and Boise Pride normally is in front of the Capitol. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go to the festival today and I'm gonna show up. I drove my car and I was so brave to go to the Capitol and say, never mind, U-turn, let me go back home. So I went home, never went to Pride that year. Next year, I decided to try to get a little bit more involved, but still I was not out completely. I saw on Facebook this ad that say, hey, we're looking for people to participate in a flash mob during Pride. And if you don't know, a flash mob is a group of dancers that is a really spontaneous number when you are like a normal scene, and then they play a music and people start showing up and they make a big event. So I was like, that is what I need, because as an introvert, shy person, I needed something to compromise to be able to do something like that. So I went, I met this amazing group of people. We practiced every Tuesday night in Julia's Baby Park. And the Pride event came. The music started, I performed. I was the only one there, so I didn't have friends or family at that point. So when the flash mob finished, everybody has their gathering and everything happening, and I was by myself. And a moment, I saw this little girl running to me. It was one of my students that I didn't know that was in the audience. So she ran to me and give me this biggest hug and say, Mr. Jahziel, you did so good. That broke my heart there and got me very emotional at that moment. So I went back home and I started thinking about what just happened. And then I started looking pictures and video and realized I never saw myself be that happy like in that moment. And I realized, this is who I am. I need to live my true self. So I decided to come out to the church, to my family. So all the links with them broke at that moment. So I needed to start again from zero here in Idaho. A year later, there was a show happening in the Balcony Club called The Virgin Show that is designed to drag queens that perform for the first time, never performed before, to get them exposed to the stage. Again, I'm very shy. I'm very introvert. All my friends were like, you need to do this. So I was like, no way, I'm gonna do that. And I was like, yes, you need to do that. It's a good exposure. And I say, I don't have anything. I don't have a wig. Never dressed up before, never wore makeup before. So what do you mean that I'm gonna do this? So peer pressure, I did it. Remember, June 1st, I did that, and I say, happy, done. I'm gonna put everything in a box, no more. 6 months later, I saw this ad for the Visual Art Collective that they do their Christmas showcase, and they were looking for drag queens. And I was like, I've been wanting to do also theater, but I'm very shy about it, but I'm like, I did drag once, so does that count? I'm like, let's go to the audition. So I went to the audition, and he was like, okay, so rehearse these steps and everything, and just do it and see if you qualify. So I did it. They say, okay, you got the role. I was like, oh, Jesus. So I was like, I'm here again. So that was like 2 or 3 months of rehearsal. I met these amazing people there, and this was like a 3-week show that was the best time of my life there, performing as a drag queen in that show. Close to it, to the end of the year, the Balcony put a show. If you know what RuPaul Drag Race is, it's a TV show. They have the local show here called Boise Next Drag Superstar. And at that point, it was like a 9 weeks competition. So again, my friends were like, you need to do this competition. And I was like, I only have 1 week and 1 dress. I am not gonna do a 9 weeks competition. They was like, you should. And I was like, my first time putting a wig on, trying to keep it stay in my head, putting eyelashes, putting makeup on. And if you ever have put an eyelashes on yourself, you know that it's hard. So it was not easy. So I was like, you know what? The deadline is approaching. I'm just gonna do a video backstage before I go on stage, really bad quality, really in the dark. They're not gonna accept me. I can tell my friends, hey, I did it. They did not accept me, sorry. And I did. I record my video as a selfie mode in the dark, and I submitted 15 minutes the deadline. I was like, you know what? They're not gonna accept me, so got it there. So for my surprise, they did accept me. And not just that, I got all the way in the competition, and I needed to find a name for myself as a performer. So at that moment, I thought, what about if I name myself Coco Chanel? You know, sounds fancy, right? Sounds sexy, sounds entertaining. So I was like, let's go with that name there. So I did the competition as a surprise. I got all the way to the final, and I got 2nd place in the competition. And that is how a little young Latin boy from Puerto Rico became the Puerto Rican drag queen of Boise, Idaho.
Thank you, Jahziel. Ben, do we have any candidates over there on our chessboard? We have, did you say 0? I'm it. Okay. Well, I can share that the production that Jahziel was in was La Cage aux Folles, which I played George in that show. And so I saw some of this happening backstage, was vaguely aware of the wig in the dark room with a videotape deadline happening. But mostly what I was aware of was this presence that was new to our theater community that was just so shining and bright and vibrant. And that was amazing. And we had, I think, a couple of first-time performers in that show, which was pretty fun. Well, I hope that you're planning to submit some names at least at intermission. Otherwise, it's going to be an early night tonight, folks, because we do need some slammers to happen. I do happen to have another Dairy Queen story, though, that I can share with you in the absence of a slammer. which this is all past touring and all that stuff. Now it's just regular life. But and I was mainly a witness to this. But my partner and I went into a Dairy Queen, and they ordered a creme de menthe. And the person at Dairy Queen just looked and was said, "What is it you want? What do you want?" A creme de menthe. I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time understanding you. What is it you're ordering? What are you trying to get here? And they look up the menu and they're pointing at it and they're like, "There, the creme de menthe." And she's like, "Oh, honey, you want the creamy de menthe?" So eventually we did get what we wanted. We just had to say it a different way. And the queen, she gets what she wants. So you have to use the queen's speech. All right, well, I'm going to bring up our next featured storyteller, who will have their own take on Queen. Also a first-time storyteller to Story Night. Please welcome Sarah Jensen.
Thank you for adjusting. I'm a tall queen. So I grew up in the small town of Weiser, Idaho. Yeah, woo. And every summer, Weiser hosted the Miss Western Idaho pageant. And every summer, my mom, my sister, and I would go and we'd sit in the audience. And I remember watching these girls compete and wear these beautiful gowns and perform their talents and answer on-stage questions. And I was a pianist. I grew up taking piano lessons from the age of 5, and I knew, as someone who loved to perform, that becoming Miss Western Idaho was my dream. My absolute dream. And I remember so vividly watching these women go through that process, the crowns placed on their head, and then I saw them everywhere afterward for a year. They would be at the crab feed. They would be in the Christmas parade. They would be at the Festival of Trees. These women were famous in Weiser for a full year, and I was obsessed. My perspective changed when my sister became one of those women. My sister's my best friend, and I have been obsessed with her since birth, but now I was like, she's one of them. She's famous too. And I didn't realize before my sister won that title and went through that process that Miss Western Idaho was just the beginning. And every Miss Western Idaho got to go on and compete at Miss Idaho. So I went to Miss Idaho when my sister was competing for the very first time. She did not win. She did not win Miss Idaho, but I know exactly who did. Her name is Sierra Sanderson. She had this long, beautiful brown hair. She wore a white gown. She went viral for wearing her insulin pump on stage. I thought she was so incredible. And I remember her crowning moment so vividly. Tears in her eyes, her white dress, her beautiful hair, the crown is being placed on her head, and she, through like tears of joy, says, "I'm going to Miss America." And I realized in that moment, my true dream was not to be Miss Western Idaho, it was to be Miss Idaho. About 7 years later, I was standing on the Miss Idaho stage myself. For the fourth time. The fourth time. And I know you're probably wondering, did I ever win Miss Western Idaho? And the answer is yes, I did. But, yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thanks for that. I did win Miss Western Idaho, but I also had to become Miss Treasure Valley, Miss Meridian, and Miss Ada County. And now I was on the Miss Idaho stage for the fourth and final time. I was 25 years old, and so was the age limit for Miss America. And I had done everything to prepare. I would listen to 3 news podcasts a day so that I was prepared for my interview and I had opinions on every major issue going on in the world. I practiced my piano song so many times, I think I could still play it to this day with my eyes closed. It was Pirates of the Caribbean, which is pretty fun. I worked with a mental management coach so that I was in the right headspace to compete in a competition of that caliber, and I felt truly to my very core like this was my year. And honestly, so did everybody else. I had about 15 friends or family in the audience. I had done well in previous competitions, and everybody had this feeling in their gut, as did I, that this was my time to shine. So we get to the final night of competition, and they announce preliminary awards. Preliminaries are the highest scoring candidate in each phase of competition. So the preliminary talent award went to me. Preliminary onstage question award went to me. So I had won 2 of the 4 phases of competition. And it's time for the crowning moment. And they announced the top 3. And again, I knew in my gut, I had worked so hard for so long, this was my moment. And it was my last time competing. They announced the second runner-up, not me. So I was like, all right, I'm still in this. First runner-up, not me. Still in it. But when they announced Miss Idaho 2021, it also wasn't me. And so I had to walk away from that whole pageant and that whole experience, and having given so many years of my life to prepare for that moment, I had to accept that it was never going to happen for me. And I did. It wasn't easy, but I moved on with my life. I started grad school, I got a dog, I moved into a new apartment. I did everything that I said I was gonna do when I was done competing in Miss Idaho, because the dream was dead. But I was a teacher, still am, but I was teaching in my classroom a few months later when I got a text from my mental management coach, who works out of Texas, so she was privy to information a little bit sooner than the rest of us in the pageant world. She sent me a text and said, hey, Miss America just increased the age limit to 26. And she was like, do you want to give it one more shot? And I was hesitant, honestly, because I had already kind of accepted that that was never going to happen for me. I had moved on, I had other responsibilities, I had a golden retriever to take care of. I was like, who has the time? But I did it anyway, because I knew I would regret it if I didn't compete for Miss Idaho one more time. So I went back. And again, I did everything that I could to prepare. Same things that I did the year before. I studied, I interview prepped, I worked with the mental management coach, I practiced my talent, I practiced on-stage questions. Anytime somebody asked me if I would play my piano song for them, I would. So I was ready. But my mindset was totally different this time, because instead of thinking of it as my very last try, instead it was an extra try, one that I wasn't expecting to get in the first place. And so I really loved the process of competing. I loved the girls. I loved being there. I loved being on stage and performing. And there are so few opportunities to get to perform as a pianist as an adult. And so I was really just trying to enjoy those moments. So we get back once again, final night of competition. They announce the preliminary winners. Preliminary talent, it was me. Preliminary onstage question, second year in a row, it was me. But they also announced the interview award winner. And this time, that was also me. So 3 of the 4 phases of competition, I had the highest scores, and I was like, okay, I'm feeling good. But I was standing on stage with trophies in my hand last year when they announced the top 3, and I did not even make the top 3. So I'm not gonna get my hopes up. It's possible, but I'm not gonna get my hopes up. Second runner-up, not me. First runner-up, also not me. But Miss Idaho 2022 was me. Yeah, thanks. Thank you. I remember throughout the course of that year, I did over 100 appearances throughout the state and the country. I didn't leave my house without my crown and my sash in my hand. And that I was still teaching full time, so I would teach all day, and then I would go to my appearances in the evening. I was living a double life. I like to joke as Miss Jensen, but also as Miss Idaho. And it was the best year of my life with so many memorable moments. But I remember the best one. My last day of work before I had to leave for Miss America. It was in December. My boss asked me to bring my crown and sash to work, and I said, okay. It's always in my car, but I'll get it out for you. And at about 2 p.m., they say over the intercom, Miss Idaho, can you please come out to the hallway? And they had every kid and every teacher and every other staff member, every parent who was in the building lining the halls with flowers and cards. And they gave me high fives and hugs and made me walk through this like tunnel of 500 kids and loved ones while they encouraged me right before I went to Miss America. And I'll never forget that. And even though I'm no longer Miss Idaho, my coworkers still call me Queen.
Well, I always wanted to introduce a Miss something, Miss Idaho, Miss America, Miss Weezer. Miss Western Idaho, that's right. It's bigger than just Weezer, isn't it? Yeah, I guess it has to be. And then you get to see, here she is, Miss Western Idaho. What we also learned from that is if you don't achieve your dream initially, just buy a dog. And always have your sash and crown at the ready. I think those are good things to take from that. We just heard from royalty, Miss Idaho 2022. Now a message from a non-royal. At the Boise Group, we aren't royal. Our clients are true queens and kings of every real estate transaction. We are the chess masters, expertly protecting the queen by thinking 5 or more steps ahead and crafting the perfect move for every situation. Whether it's securing your ideal castle or selling at the highest price, we're here to help you achieve the ultimate checkmate. Thank you, Boise Group, for supporting tonight's show. And speaking of sponsorships, one of our volunteers who coordinates sponsors and has been with Story Night as long as I have, is going to tell you a few things about what that means. Here is Hannah Mae Schaefer.
Much smaller than the queen.
Yes.
Hi, guys. I've been with Story Night for over 10 years. And I am a super fan of this event. I love every story told. It's a really great way to build community. And in Boise, we're the current City of Boise Cultural Ambassador. So we're a recognized cultural community organization. And if you love Story Night as much as I do, we do have sponsorship opportunities, and you can get a really cool shout out from the stage, just like Keenly and the Boise Group. I don't know if they're writing their own sponsorship messages or you're coming up with those. Super clever, super creative. I do want to say it's really accessible. It's $500 a show, and if anybody's interested in carrying on, making sure that Story Night, well, we're always going to be here. But if you want to be a part of this really cool event, you can come talk to me over at the Slammer booth with Ben. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Hannah. All right, we've heard lots of different takes already on the queen theme. We've heard about becoming a queen. We've heard about being a queen. We've heard about Dairy Queen. So maybe you've had a moment where you felt like a queen, or you've had someone lording over you or bossing you around. 5-minute story during intermission. You can go visit Ben and Hannah over at the Slammer booth and put your name in for the second act. We're going to take about a 10-minute break. You can also visit Everly Campbell in the lobby here and see her sculptures and her zine, Queen Zine. And the other thing that we have available in the lobby that I haven't talked about is this new initiative by the board, which is a punch card that they thought would be a cool thing for stocking stuffers or to give as a gift. It's available in the lobby, and you can give it to somebody, and then they can come at any time during the Story Night season, and we just punch the card and let them in. So it has 4 shows on it, so they can either come with a group of friends, or they themselves can come and join the community 4 times throughout the season. So Darian is going to play during intermission, and we'll see you back in here for another great set of stories in about 10 minutes. All right, welcome back to the second act of Story Night's royal show, Queen. We're gonna start with a featured song by our musical guest, Darian Renee, and it has reminded me of another aspect of what I imagine being a queen is like. We've all heard the phrase, "it's lonely at the top." Performing an original song, Darian Renee's Lonely.
Similar to Jodi, I have had an experience in touring, and with that, you know, you can see amazing parts of the world and have incredible experiences, and when you do them by yourself, there's partly this feeling of, wow, I did it, I made it, I'm at the top of this mountain right now, and partly this feeling of, oh, but I'm the only one up here. Pros and cons. Without further ado, I wrote this song while I was traveling. As Jodi said, it's called Lonely. I took the train into the city. I left my brain somewhere behind. Wondered what it's like out there in the summertime. So I guess that's where I'll be for a while. I packed my bags, head for the station. Looked out my window, waved goodbye. Good thing nobody else was waving back. Good thing no one was there to see me cry. And it gets so lonely late at night. Ooh. But the only company you need is the man in the moon, the stars in the sky. You gotta take those dusty dreams off the shelf. Ooh. It ain't so lonely doing right by yourself. So I take my time in the garden, and I watch the sunrise from the stairs. And I don't try to fill the voids of silence, but a part of me still wishes you were there. And it gets so lonely you could cry. and the stars in the sky. When you take those dusty dreams off the shelf, you know it ain't so lonely doing right by yourself. So I got a house in the suburbs, filled it with pictures of things I've seen, and my dog too. I sleep in a king-size bed all by myself, 'cause that's better than living someone else's dream. You gotta take those dusty dreams off the shelf. It ain't so lonely doing right by yourself. Said it ain't so lonely doing right by yourself.
Thank you, Darian. That was gorgeous.
Thank you.
So lonely doing right by yourself. Yeah, I imagine times feeling like doing right and feeling alone. That can be lonely. But I also am thinking of a new idea of what a queen is, and maybe a queen is when you are living your dream. That's what it is to be a queen. I like that a lot. Yeah. Well, my dream right now, Ben, is that you have some Slammer tickets over there. Oh, he's coming with the chessboard. Thank goodness. Because I have no more stories about Dairy Queen. Oh, great. We have a lovely... Oh, they're the pawns. I see. What a fancy chess. Look at these guys. Look like they could take an eye out. It's made out of a bolt and a marble. You know, actually, it's also very interesting that you talked about the man on the moon, because the sculptures of the little queen figurines, some of them, their heads are the moon.
Ooh.
It all comes together, yeah.
I planned it.
Good work.
I wrote it for that.
All right, I'm going to go for this one right here. Let's see who we have. Okay. This has been a very active storyteller recently, but we always love having her on our stage. I assume this is the right person. If I've never met you before, we'll talk about that later. I think we're asking Jean to come up on stage. We have a queen amongst us.
Well, so I was inspired by Jodi's Dairy Queen stories. And I have one myself. A long time ago, we won't say how many years, but a while, I was not a journalist. I was a wannabe writer, but no. I was working as a office manager for a psychiatrist in Kansas City. Now, this psychiatrist, it was a family psychiatry business, and so he had two offices. One was in Kansas City, Missouri, and the other one was in Overland Park, Kansas. Mine was in Overland Park, Kansas. And I worked really hard. I transcribed his notes. He had a lot of clients come in and patients, and it was all very interesting. And I wasn't a super fast typist, but I thought I was pretty good. And I was very personable and, met the people that came in and did the filing. And I thought I was doing a great job. And one day, did I tell you that this psychiatrist was also on the side a backyard barbecuer aficionado? And you may know the company that he founded with his own barbecue sauce, KC Masterpiece. He also came up with an idea of a mustard and ketchup concoction that he called Must-Chup, that for some crazy reason never took off. I don't know why. But so one day, we'll call him Dr. Davis, because that was his name. One day, Dr. Davis came out to the reception area where I worked, and he said, "Jean, why don't you go to Dairy Queen and get us a lunch and come back and we'll have a lunch in my office together?" I thought, man, I'm going to get a raise because he had never had lunch with me before. I was very excited. For one thing, the Brazier burgers, right? And he gave me the money. I went over to Dairy Queen, brought it back, went into his office, sat down, and he fired me. And I thought, wow, you had me go to Dairy Queen for this? And so I kind of put my tail between my legs and kind of walked out, and that's the only time I've ever been fired in my life. I didn't ask him why, but I think it was probably because I wasn't a very fast typist. And in my house, we never, ever use KC Masterpiece barbecue sauce.
Much up. I don't know that Ketchard would have worked any better, though. I was actually quite a fast typist. This says something about when I was in high school. We took keyboarding class, and most people took one semester. I took the whole year. And it was an important time in the history of the world because we moved from our electric typewriters to word processors. And when that happened, because I did a lot of programming on my Commodore 64 where I had to type in the programs, so I got kind of good at knowing where the keys were. So I felt like I had a little bit of an advantage, but we had these books where you had to write, "Dear Mr. Simmons, your carpet order has been back ordered," and all the periods and everything in the right place. Well, because I was such a fast typist, and now we had these word processors that you could save the assignment on, some of my classmates decided, hey, what would be really great is for us not to type this stupid letter about carpet. Just wait till Jodi's done, and then just hit the print button again. Well, about 6 of us got called in after class after apparently I made the same, I didn't make the same error, I only typed it once, but there was a comma that was not in the right place, and apparently Mrs. Bryant actually read these letters. So we got in a little bit of trouble. We're going to move on to our last featured storyteller this evening, and as I mentioned, we have people that we've recruited and people that we've submitted. This next storyteller is someone that I recruited, but what's unusual about it is I often, when I recruit someone, I know something about their story. So there's something about what they do or the story that I think, this will be a good fit for this show. This person is an individual who I didn't know anything about her story. I had met her in passing because we both do the fund drives at Boise State Public Radio's music station, and she had the early shift and I had the next shift, and we just would pass in the hall, and I thought there's something very regal about this person. And also I could hear her voice on the radio, and she has such a beautiful voice as well. So I asked if she thought she would come up with a story for Queen, and she said, yes, I have a story. I would love to come, so please welcome for the first time, Yvonne McCoy.
I feel kind of like a fake here because all the others just came up here and spoke, and I have my little notes. Thank you for the applause for the notes. I had grown up in southwestern Virginia. I won't tell you how many years ago. It was a segregated community at the time. I had never really known many white people because it really was segregated. The library was segregated. The schools were segregated. I loved to read. I wasn't allowed to go to the library and check books out of the library. So it was really quite segregated. But I used to watch a lot of TV. I used to read a lot. And really the only way I knew anything about the rest of America, the non-black part of America, was through television or through these books. I remember being very young, maybe 6 or 7, maybe I shouldn't have told you that because now you'll be able to guess my age. I remember seeing the coronation of Elizabeth II, Queen of England. It was extraordinary, so luxurious, rich, gorgeous. She had this crown. I wanted to be a queen. I wanted that crown. I wanted to have all of these people standing around kind of worshiping me. It was just spectacular to see and experience. And to this day, I read about Elizabeth II. I watch documentaries about Elizabeth II. I've seen all of these Masterpiece Theater series about her. It was really influential. I knew that's what I wanted to be. But she didn't look like me. So I thought, how am I gonna do that? How am I gonna be her, like her? Of course, nowadays, who knows what could happen to the noble families of England. There's gonna be Lilibet and Archie, who may look like me someday. So things have changed in England. Years later, I was a sophomore at Howard University, a historically black college and university. And when I arrived, my parents drove me there. When I arrived, there was a young lady, another student there from my hometown. She was really from different circumstances, though. Her parents had PhDs. They taught at another small state historically black college. And she was just interesting in ways that I never thought a young black girl could be. I hadn't seen anyone who was really like her before. And here she was at the same school. And I thought, I must have really made it because she's here too. I went out to get my trunk. My parents helped me get my trunk into my dorm room. And when they left, I just sat there alone for the first time in my life and just overflowed with tears. I was so scared and lonely. And finally, I just bucked myself up and went out to probably to get something to eat. And as I was coming out the dorm room, I saw that young lady. And she had gorgeous clothes. Her parents had this gorgeous car. She, you know, the luggage, it was all matched luggage, matched bedding. Everything was matchy, matchy, matchy. It was, I thought, she's gonna be a queen someday. I wanna be like her. The heck with Queen Elizabeth. I wanna be like her. She looks like me, except she's all matchy, matchy. And I thought it was just wonderful. Then there was also a young lady who lived across the hall from me in the dorm. It turned out she was a theater major. She was gorgeous, she had presence, she was obviously talented. You could tell, everybody in the dorm could tell that right away, that she was gonna make it someday. In those days, you probably don't remember, but in those days, there were no black people on TV. I think probably Sanford and Son maybe was the only black person on TV. So I thought, there aren't many of us on TV. We're not gonna make it there. What's she gonna do? But then we all saw her perform. We knew if anybody was gonna make it, she was gonna make it. She was going to audition for the theater club, a play. And I thought, could I do that? You know, she's doing it, why can't I do that? But, you know, I wasn't prepared. I didn't memorize anything. I did help my roommate study her lines and went with her to encourage her. And my roommate auditioned. The young princess, soon to be queen, was going to audition. The funny thing is, my roommate didn't get in. This wonderfully talented young lady who could sing, act, dance, play the guitar. You know, she'd had private lessons and of all sorts. She didn't get in. I did. And I wasn't even prepared. It was just spontaneous. I just did a spontaneous reading, and I got in. It helped me see myself in a different way. I thought, you know, maybe there is an opportunity here. Maybe I could try this. It gave me a lot of confidence. All of these young women that I met there were queens in the making. Other students who were smart. Don't forget, this was the school later attended by Kamala Harris. So it was a very good school. It was kind of the Harvard of the black community. And it was just extraordinary being there, having these wonderful professors and fellow students. Toni Morrison taught there. Just a great school. And I was there. Of course, I didn't have the financial support that the other queens did. I didn't have the emotional support that they had. But so I thought, how am I gonna do this? How am I gonna make my way through this? I just had to look at them, and I knew if they could do it, even with the support they had, I could do it too. I was lucky I had some good teachers who encouraged me and supported me. It was just very interesting. All the students dressed beautifully. In those days, when we went to football games, you had to kind of dress like someone special. You couldn't wear jeans. You had to wear a dress or a skirt or tailored slacks, even to go to the games. I thought, this is wonderful, but I'm not like them, really. I felt kind of like an outsider because my family was poor. I didn't have the advantages that they had, but I thought I could still do it. Just by looking at them, I thought I could do it. I could make it. I just had to find my way through. Most of the students at Howard were like these queens in my dorm. They were successful, they were smart, they came from very good families. You knew they were going to do well, but still it was kind of a segregated community. It was going to be within the Black community, not the world at large or in general. Well, a few years after we graduated, I went to see a very successful Broadway play. And I looked at the playbill, and whose name was in that playbill? The star of the show was an actress named Felicia Allen. You probably know her as Felicia Rashad, who was Claire Huxtable on The Cosby Show. She had made it. She was successful. She was beautiful. She was well respected. We knew she was going to do it. If anybody made it, she was the one to do it. And it kind of affirmed for me that, yes, we could be queens too. Queens could be this color. And I just felt so honored to have met her, to have known her, to have worked with her, to have lived across the dorm, the floor with her, to have beaten her out of a role in the play. So it was really amazing to see what one can do, what you can do for yourself. You can make your own way. You don't necessarily have to have all that money and emotional support from parents, although it helps. You can do it yourself. And I felt I was able to do that. At some point, I moved to Idaho, and I worked for Senator Frank Church. He is still my hero. His wife, Bethine Church, is still one of my heroes. She was a queen. It was just an amazing experience growing up in this way, having those influences, seeing those examples. I still think back, though, to the girl from my hometown. And unfortunately, this was, when we were in college, this was before Roe v. Wade. She became pregnant. And unfortunately, she had a back alley abortion. That was one of the few options you had in those days. And unfortunately, she died in her boyfriend's apartment alone. And to this day, I think what she might have done had she lived, all the things she might have accomplished. She was so smart, just like her parents. I thought for sure she's going to get a PhD, just like her parents. She's going to be very successful, and it didn't happen. So now I even think, what would young women do today now that Roe v. Wade has been torn away? What would happen to those young women today? What options would they have? And I'm not sure, but it makes me sad to think about it. And as soon as I think about that sadness, when it overwhelms me sometimes, I still think there's hope. There's so much opportunity in this country. We may feel, it may look like we've lost our way, that we've lost a lot, but we can always get it back. We can always do something more to bring our country back to what it used to be. I hate to say, make America great again, but it does apply here. We can make America great again. All we have to do is try. Think of yourself as a queen. Think of yourself as a king. Think of your children, your grandchildren in that same way. And you can make a difference. It'll bring you joy. That's our country. That's what we can look forward to. And whenever I think about this country, I think where I came from and where I am now. And it gives me hope for the future for young people coming up. We can do wonderful things. We can all become kings and queens in our lives, in our country. So thank you very much, and hope I'll see you again.
Thank you so much, Yvonne. See, I was right. I found a queen, didn't I? They are amongst us. And I have a special guest to introduce you to. This is a person you know a little something about already. Please welcome to the stage, kind of for the first time, Coco Freeo.
So this is me, Coco Freeo, and I know that I end up the story saying that my name was Coco Chanel, right? So I need to tell you why now I'm Coco Freeo, right? So when I moved here and I started exploring my identity and this part of me as a performer, I wanted to have something really close to my island. And if you, and I'm probably you haven't, go to Puerto Rico, you will see a lot of signs around the island that says Coco Freeo. That means cold coconut water, because we're an island, so we sell coconut water, right? Everywhere. So I thought that's something really special to me, really close, and that's gonna be my name. So that's what I put my name, Coco Freeo, but F-R-E-E-O, so that white people can pronounce my name correctly. So when I start performing, a lot of the people were, a lot of the other performers were saying, oh, you look really different. You look like really regal, really like big hair, nice outfit. I don't know why you are dressing like that. And in my head, I was like, I don't understand what these people are talking about. So was not until a couple years later, in 2021, we went with a group of friends to Puerto Rico. And when I got there, my friends were like, hey, let's go to this drag show in Puerto Rico. And I was like, a drag show? I didn't know that culture existed in Puerto Rico because I never was in a bar before there. They were like, yeah, it is this nice drag show there, let's go. So when we walk into the bar and I start seeing other drag queens and I saw one on stage, I saw myself reflected on them. Big hair, nice clothing, the way that they were dancing, the way that they were moving, and that click, that is why people in Idaho has been telling that I look so different. I was doing already what my culture do back home without realizing that I was that person. So at that moment, I realized and say, you know what? I'm gonna embrace it. So I continue wearing my jewelry, my big hair, my fashion, and then was not until one show at the Balcony Club called Dia de los Muertos, where a lot of Latinx other performers got together, I decided to do a number that was really close to my heart. It's called Bomba, and it's a traditional dance in Puerto Rico, part of our ancestors. And I used to do that dance back home with my friends, and I say, why I don't incorporate that? Because I've been trying to fit in the American culture, trying to do English music that I never heard before, because I never heard English music when I live in Puerto Rico. So I decided to do that Bomba. After that moment, when I left stage, the people were, we never seen you performing like that. It was like a totally different person. And I was like, should I embrace more my culture and bring it here to the state as something different? And that's what I did. I started performing more Latinx performances, more Latinx artists, and started embracing who I was and became like the drag queen from Puerto Rico in Boise, Idaho. Would you like to see a little bit of that dance? I think that you do. So let's, DJ, play the track.
María Luisa, no seas mala. No seas mala. Llévame contigo pa' la playa. Dímelo otra vez. María Luisa, no seas mala. Llévame contigo. María Luisa, que tú estás bien buena, buena. Vámonos solitos pa' Isabela. ¡Dice! Abrió la puerta y puso el perrillo y se fue solita pa'l luquillo. María Luisa, no seas mala. Llévame contigo pa' la playa. Nos vamos pa' la playa. Pa' la playa. Pa' la playa. Dígalo, Yomar. Pa' la playa. 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 Me encanta esta vaina, me encanta. María Luisa, y no seas tan mala. Llévame contigo pa' la playa. Díselo. Llévame contigo pa' la playa. Llévame contigo pa' la playa. María Luisa, no seas mala. No seas mala. Llévame contigo pa' la playa. María Luisa, no seas mala. Llévame contigo.
Coco Freeo! I think that makes Boise pretty special. We have a Puerto Rican drag queen. In the desert island, the island desert. Very good. Well, I didn't plan a curated story to follow that act. I'm going to make one of you follow it. So, Ben, if you would bring the chess set over here. Jahziel and I met on the stage at Alley Rep Theater, and I'm actually in rehearsal for a show there that's opening in December now. Miraculously, Boise got the rights to the recently closed Broadway show Merrily We Roll Along by Sondheim. So we're going to perform it in December, and what that means is I'm going to miss the first Story Night show that I have missed in 8 years. But I have something very fun planned for you. It's going to be guest hosted by the Morning Edition host, George Prentice. So that'll be fun, yes. And we also have for our special music, the Jewish Elvis, the King, Neil Diamond as performed by Guy Finley. So that should be fun. Let's see, I picked from that row last time. I'll go to this time. Thank you. All right, looks like we have, this is very appropriate for royalty because this person's first name is Jules. Jules Vetter. All right, you have 5 minutes to share your queenly story, and then if we approach the 5 minutes, I will start approaching you with courtial, gestural, something or others. All right.
Hi, everyone. This is my first story night. I'm so excited to be here. Okay, so this is a hard act to follow, but I staged a coup in preschool. I'd love to say that was my only one, but that was my first one. We were pretty upset. They took away chocolate milk, and I think that's cruel and unusual for anyone of any age. So I got some of my friends together and we decided that it did not matter if we needed to know how to spell queen. We were going to act like little queens and refuse to do anything for the day until we got our chocolate milk. That didn't really work out well for us. But I did experience for the first time that I could bring people together and that my voice had influence even just for a day, even if the result was just a call home to my mom. So she says I was a handful, I don't remember it. I didn't really experience that power again until high school. No one escapes middle school unscathed, but I did experience it again in high school. I was a huge band nerd, and I still kind of am on the weekends. But I joined marching band, and I very quickly realized that I loved to conduct, and I loved bringing people together. I had some amazing, amazing people that I looked up to in leadership, and I was able to audition in my sophomore year of high school and ended up as a drum major, so I conducted our marching band. And then our band director got pretty burnt out, so I started taking over rehearsals too. I ended up running our marching band for 3 years, and in that time I was able to bring together a lot of people. I saw those scared freshmen that I once was, and I was able to make them feel seen in a way that I really wasn't. I burnt out of that around my senior year. It was May of 2020 when I graduated. And I think at that point, a lot of us were feeling a little powerless. All of our community that we had carefully created was now separate and online and on Zoom. And it was pretty difficult. I moved to a college that didn't work for me, and then I moved back home, and it was still the pandemic. So I transferred to Boise and came here completely alone. All of my friends were now a year ahead of me in school, and I didn't really know anyone. I was starting over for the second time, and I had lost all my community and my power. I joined the library on accident at Boise State in the Maker Lab, which is our maker space. It's open access. You should all visit it. It's really cool. But what I experienced there was someone who saw me, saw my voice, and saw my propensity for bringing people together. And I was able to start creating a team of people who saw the world the way that I did. I helped train and bring together a team of 6 students, and we started hosting workshops for our campus community. And we started supporting each other and really seeing what the world could be like if we brought creativity, especially to the majors that didn't get to experience that. Computer science doesn't have to just be locked away on a computer in the dark on your own. Who knew? we started being able to make a real difference in that people started hanging around and realizing that when we were talking to each other and caring for each other and being able to strengthen our campus community, we were all thriving better together. I am still in leadership in lots of different ways, and I often found myself in the past in the position of queen, of I had to be adaptable and leading everyone and doing everything on my own. But when I learned chess about a month ago, I realized that the queen is really powerful, but only when it's used in tandem with the entire team. If you are using only the queen, you're not going to get very far. You can go fast, you can make a lot of really daring moves, but it's only when you use every piece on the board that you are really able to win the game. And I am so grateful that I don't have to do this alone anymore, and I can just focus on the next right step, knowing that I have an entire team around me, and we're gonna build this community together. Thank you.
Thank you, Jules. All right, we also learned some chess strategy there. Use all the players. It's good that there's someone helping these computer nerds in the dark. As I mentioned, I was kind of a computer nerd, but I didn't have Jules in my life, so I was left to find my own creative devices. And one of the things I did, at that time, the joystick I had, I'd taken, even though I was on a Commodore 64, the joystick I had was ripped off from an Atari system. And and the little plastic thing handle that covers comes right off. And I found that it fit perfectly on my forehead. And so I stuck it on my forehead and I continued to do some programming. Time just goes by so fast, you know, when you're a computer nerd in the dark. And so I happily just continued doing my keyboarding. And later on, I came out of my room, and it was pointed out to me that I had a giant red hickey on my forehead, which lasted quite some time. All right, Ben, let's have another red ticket and get another queen story here. Oh, it's great to hear about the leadership in the community and to hear about community, frankly. All right, there's quite a community on this board. Oh, you've rearranged them for me. Great, I'll go straight to this one over here on the side, which it looks like, well, we are all about true stories, and this person's last name is True. Please welcome Kiara, unless that's a lie.
For helping out the short people. So happy to be here. I have not been on a stage in a really long time, so I'm super nervous. But I grew up in Austin, and I'm gonna take this down a deep, dark hole, but then it's gonna get better. So I grew up in Austin, and as a little girl, having two parents who are self-coined massholes. You may know what this is if you know anything about the East Coast. I have always had a very big personality. I have always been opinionated. I have always been loud. I have always questioned everything. And growing up in the South around a lot of Baptists, that was not really very well received as a child. So one of my outlets was that I loved to journal. It was where I had free rein to be myself. And it was really my healing place. It was where I found who I was. It was where there was no judgment. It was everything to me. As a young girl, I was incredibly insecure. I always sought out who I was through the eyes of other people. And that path led to a lot of abusive relationships and a lot of really horrible experiences in my life, being around really awful people who took advantage of that insecurity in me. And I still found journaling to be my release. But one day, my mom found my journal. And it had my big personality, my loud personality, my cuss words at the age of 9. And it was also found out some choices that I was making that were really unhealthy for me. When I found out that my mom read my journal, my world collapsed. I had no outlet. My loud self, my big self, couldn't be me. I lost the only thing I loved. And that lack of a space, a safe space to release who I was, turned inward. At the age of 15, I ended up dating an extremely abusive man. And yes, he was a man. At the end of it, he stalked me for 6 months at the age of 15. And I eventually continued on in life, continuing to have poor relationships, continuing to seek out who I was through the view of other people. I found myself at UT, which is the University of Texas, for those who don't know. And I came across a community through all of my friends in the breakdancing, underground, rap, hip-hop battles. I know, look white. But those are my people. And I met some really amazing people. One who has gone on to star in the show The Last of Us. Another one who has gone on to be an amazing musician. And being surrounded by those people and that type of community, I found spoken word. And it was the release I needed. It was journaling on steroids. I got to be loud. I got to be me. It didn't matter if anybody agreed with me or not. I got to be me. And during that season in life, while a young college student, finding myself, I was dating a guy who was abusive. He treated me awful. He dated other people while he was with me and made all the excuses to do it. But he was, I like my Latin men, he was the hot Latin breakdancer. Ooh, he was delicious. So I just took it. I don't deserve anything else, right? I don't deserve better. But through spoken word, I wrote a poem, which I'm sorry already to disappoint you. I am not going to share because I don't even remember it right now. But I wrote a poem, and it was a breakup poem to him. And I went to a party. I just couldn't bring myself to break up with him. And my best friend, who is still my best friend to this day, said, "You need to perform that poem." And I said, "But he's here." She said, "Yes." After about 20 tequila shots, I got up in that living room, and with all of who I was, I performed that poem to his face, eye contact. And that's when I finally found myself again and found the queen that I can be in my life and that it doesn't have to revolve around somebody else's view of who I am. Thank you.
Wow, I've heard of breakup poetry, but dang, breakup poetry. Also, I think I'd like to live in that journal world because my journals that I kept are not the most pleasant place to be. They're like, boy, you need to get it together. Like, you gotta do this, you gotta do that. So that's exciting. Thank you for coming to our space and feeling like this is a safe place for you to be your big self, because that's what we want it to be. I love that. Let's do one more slammer, shall we? You got it. Ben's doing multiple jobs over there. He's holding it together. He's a man of strategy. 2 moves ahead. I don't know, 4 moves ahead? How many moves do you have to be ahead? All right, here we go. Unfortunately, we're not going to get to all the stories tonight. You guys should have entered your tickets sooner. Okay, let's go with this one. All right. Please welcome Alex Bruce. Oh, some people know Alex.
There are no shortage of queens in my life. My mother has a PhD. My neighbor is a lawyer. She's retired. My younger sibling right now is studying international relations as an undergrad, and my partner is Jules. So there are no shortage of people who could be considered queens in my life, but I really wanted to talk today about somebody who impacted me when I was kind of going through those formative years where no one escapes high school unscathed, which is Tanya Ward. She is one of the people who reached out to me in a moment. Well, I guess I should backtrack. Tanya is the mother of 2 people who have been a part of my life for almost as long as I can remember. I would classify them almost as siblings at this point. And she has such a large personality where she lights up the whole room when she walks in. She works as a diplomat in the U.S. Embassy, and has for many years, but is right now pursuing her master's degree after an entire career in diplomacy, which is just truly a statement to who the kind of person that she is, willing to kind of take that moment and be like, all right, I've done this for a while, and now it's time to get better again. And one of the moments that was most important to me in my relationship with Tanya, who is always to me Miss Tanya, which I think is very important to state, even now as I've entered the era of adulthood where suddenly people start losing the nomer in front of their names, the miss or whatever, now I'm starting to enter the world of real adult, where I get to say, ah yes, Tanya. It doesn't feel quite right yet. Especially not her. She earns that, I think, that kind of reverence, if you will. But when I was early on in high school, I was really struggling with my mental health, and it was something that I didn't really know how to deal with. And as is with high schoolers, I didn't feel like I could talk to my parents about it. But it was something that I needed, that adult support in my life. And Miss Tanya reached out to me, I think pulled me aside at one of our family dinners where we all got together, all 8 of us, my family unit and the wards, and we would get together. And she pulled me aside and she was like, hey, we should get coffee sometime. And during this coffee, she revealed to me that she has struggled for a long, long time with her own mental health, and that she continued to do all of this amazing work, being a mother of 2, a diplomat, and somebody who is just a pillar of community and a beacon of joy. And I didn't have somebody who would say, hey, I have struggled, and I am here for you. You will struggle and you will grow. And I think that was a real true moment of genuine human connection. And I think that she is perhaps one of the true queens of this world for that, for taking a kind of scared kid working through the terrors of high school and dealing with mental health crises to be like, okay, we're going to do this together. You have me, you have us, and we are kind of a community. So I really want to bring her into this space of queendom because I think she, out of everyone, deserves it. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, wow, some great tributes to people who are queens in our lives. I love that. It's been a while since we've been at Flagship, since last April, so I haven't even tested this yet. Does the theme song come on still? Oh. Stories come from the land as well as its people, and I want to acknowledge that we are on the traditional land of the Shoshone-Bannock people. Thank you to our season sponsor, Keenly, and our show sponsor, the Boise Group. Story Night is supported by public funding for the arts through the Idaho Commission on the Arts, the Idaho Legislature, and the National Endowment for the Arts. We also receive funding from the Boise City Department of Arts and History. Remember, you can listen to podcasts from all our shows or see the flagship shows on our YouTube channel. We also have a radio show. It's Story Night on Stray Theater, which is typically on the Sunday before our live show from 5:30 to 6 on Radio Boise. Thank you to our crew, technical director, podcast, and video engineer, Stephen Baldessari. Thank you to our photographer, Christina Birkenbein at Boise Christina. You can see her photos on our Facebook page. Thank you to our guest musician, Darian Renee. Thank you to our interpreters, Lavona Andrew and Patty Durham. Thank you to our volunteers and our volunteer coordinator, Natalia DiJosia. Thank you to our board of directors. Thank you to our story subscribers. Thank you to Jump and the crew for hosting us here. And this is how I like to end this show, by just adding that, it's something like, story, story night, story, story, good night, beginning, middle, now at the end. Authentic, inspiring, spontaneous. So thank you to all those who shared their stories and you who really listened. I might have come here as a stranger, but now I'm leaving as a friend. And we've learned to be a queen, you just have to live your own dream. And so the stories never end. We can see you at late night on December 17th, back here the day after Christmas on December 26th for the King. Thank you so much. Good night.